back in so it will stay. And Keeney's is a produce company that actually normally, under normal conditions, provides fruits and vegetables and services, small grocery stores, and also major restaurants and companies. We got grapes, lettuce, we've got cauliflower. We've even got asparagus. With Easter right around the corner, we love having asparagus. And that's just such a delicious spring vegetable. We have oranges, and I'm feeling these oranges. They feel like they're going to be just perfect. I like putting oranges in my tea. And whether it's hot or cold, you can decide what you like from there. This was a surprise. I wasn't expecting. We got mangoes. And our mangoes are nice and soft, and they're ready to be used immediately. So that's going to be the fruit I use first. Then I got turnips. I got all kinds of root vegetables. I have yellow squash, which this is a good time for yellow squash as well. I got different colors of carrots. We've got potatoes and cucumbers. And we even had tomatoes, little grape tomatoes, because you know it's early in the season for tomatoes. But that's the haul. Oh, let me not forget, we also have bananas. Bananas and a cantaloupe. So we had quite a mix of vegetables. And I am just really pleased with what I received. So there we go. You got a good look. Our bananas, carrots, turnips and root vegetables. We've got tons of yellow squash. We've got asparagus, and they're nice little small, thin, delicious, tender asparagus. We've got cauliflower, lettuce. Here's our grapes and the other fruit. They're going to be delicious. Well, when you're staying at home, you find all kinds of projects to do. And so the big guy is going to power wash our deck. This is our screen porch. He's going to take care of getting a good clean for that. And if you look out this way, I've taken all the pillows off the furniture. We're going to give them a good power wash as well. I went out yesterday. I didn't go out, but I was here yesterday. I'm trying to get my flower pots ready as well. I've got them over there. I'm scrubbing them down because we got to get this grill going. And I did some painting and getting things ready for inside of the porch. So we've got lots of projects going. I took one of the flags down so it wouldn't be in the way, because I know the products that he uses to clean the porch have a little bit of bleach, and I didn't want the flag to be destroyed. So we are going to be able to get that all cleaned up hopefully today, so that we can spend some time together just lounging and reading and even having dinner out on the deck. I'm looking forward to that. Well, you know, guys, when you're home and you're kind of stuck here for a little while, you have to figure out constructive things to do. And since we are not running to the grocery store every time something runs out, we need to come up with a plan. Now, I'm out of bread, so guess what? I'm going to make some bread. Now, first of all, I'm going to put in the bottom of my bowl 1 cup of hot water. Then I'm going to put in a 1/2 cup of milk. All right, so those two are taken care of. I also need some sugar. add in about a 1/4 cup, just a little short of a 1/4 cup of sugar. So that's in there too. I'm going to get my wooden spoon because we're going to do a no-knead bread. But because our liquid is nice and hot, now I want all of that to dissolve. Okay. Now, I'm a butter girl, and I like that buttery flavor in my bread. So I am going to warm up just a little bit of butter in my container here. About a tablespoon of butter. I'm going to put in there. I'm going to put it in the microwave so it can melt. And then I'll add it to this mixture. Now, I am also going to put in here at least 3, possibly 3.5 to 3 1/4 cups of flour. Now we also need some salt, but I'm not going to add the salt in until we've had a chance to get our yeast in and get it started. Okay, so I got my butter. Make sure it's nice and melted. Still a little warm. Put it into my liquid. And since the liquid is warm as well, I'll just give that a little stir. So what I'm first going to do, I'm going to add in, I'm using 1/2 cup measures here, just so you know, and that's to save using so many cups. All right, so we've got 1/2. 2, there's 1 cup. 3, 4. Now that's 2 cups. And I'm going to put those 2 cups in, and I'm going to give this a real good stir. Now let me sprinkle in my yeast. I need 2 tablespoons of yeast. Now the reason I use milk as a part of the liquid is that, okay, there's our yeast. And you know I store my yeast in the freezer, so if you see it's kind of cloudy, that's because we brought it out into the warm. See how you can see the frostiness of it? Okay, so I need to put that back in the freezer because that's where I keep my yeast so that it will last. Now, so we're going to take this and we're going to mix. Now this is a rapid rise yeast, so it should not have some issues. So I have about 2 cups, and I'm just kind of making a starter. Get it going, get the yeast happy. I'm going to give this about 10 to 15 minutes. Get our starter going about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll start to add more yeast. Now already I can see the bubbles kicking in because there's sugar in there, and that yeast is happy. It's feeding off of the sugars that are in the flour. So I'm going to actually, while I got everything here, I'm going to go ahead and measure out my salt. I need about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. If you like more salt, then you can put in 2. But 1.5 works for us. And you have to have some salt because otherwise your bread will have absolutely no flavor. So let's give this a minute to get happy, even happier. And then we'll start to add in some more flour. Now this is where things got noisy, so I had to switch over and take out the background noise. So what I'm doing is just sprinkling in a little bit of flour. I have about 2 cups in that container that you're looking at, so you'll see that I'm sprinkling it in. And the reason why I'm taking that time to be particular about how much I've put in is because I don't want too much flour in the bread, because then it'll be very, very dry. Now I added the salt that we had already measured, and so everything is going to be stirred and incorporated. Notice there's no KitchenAid being used. We're doing everything by hand, and you're going to see that this bread is going to come out absolutely perfect. So I'm taking a little bit by hand and just kind of sprinkling it over the dough, because the dough is stringy, it's still pretty wet, and that's okay, because at this point everything needs to incorporate. The flour that is already in it is going to soak up the moisture that's in there. So I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of that flour that I had measured out. I'm going to put it on the board so that I can use that as I'm working with the dough. Now I'm getting my scraper, what's called a bench scraper. And I have several, but the ones I like the most are the ones I actually get at Dollar Tree. And I can use those. They help in getting the dough out of the bowl, as well as moving the dough around without your hands having to get quite so messy. And I don't know if you caught sighting of the big guy, but he's in the background and moving around as well, because he's working on the deck. So I'm getting the dough out of the bowl, trying to make sure I have what I need, and it is very, very sticky. So I'm going to take a little more flour and just sprinkle over it so that I can work with it, and it won't make such a mess. But that's what we're going to do. And we're keeping that bowl because we're going to use it. So notice that you scrape and fold, and scrape and fold. Just kind of keep pressing things in. And I don't want anything to really stick at this point. And actually, remember, we had planned to use a certain amount of flour anyway. So that's why I'm being careful not to overuse the flour, but yet and still I don't mind using a little more at this point. So we're just going to fold, and you see he's kind of fighting with me a little bit at this point, but and that's okay, because the gluten is starting to set up. So I am just scraping and folding, scraping and folding. And you'll see that finally it will get to the point where it's not difficult to move. So I'm just kind of throwing out a little sprinkles of flour. Hopefully it doesn't look like I'm sprinkling a lot, because I'm really not. And we're just moving it around. I'm going to get it into a ball, and then we'll be ready to put it into the bowl for the first rise. So see, now I can actually work with it with my hands as well as with the scraper. It's soft. You can see it's very soft, and it's a little heavy at this point. Now I'm stretching, trying to activate the gluten, and that will also help with just getting the yeast to react with the ingredients. So we are going to work with that for just a few minutes. In fact, it may seem like it's taken a little while, but it was no more than 5 minutes, not even, I'm just kind of playing around with it at this point. And what I want to do is just roll it around until I can get it into a nice, fairly smooth ball. And you'll see that every now and then it'll start to stick, and that's when I have to use the scraper. So we're going to continue to work with that. I may sprinkle a little bit more on there, but I don't think so. So I think at this point I'm just going to put it in the bowl. I like very often to put in just a little bit of oil, so I'm taking some of my grapeseed oil and just kind of sprinkling it around inside of the bowl, and use that bench scraper, and we're going to pick it up and plop right there into the bowl. Now I'm going to sprinkle a little flour on it, only because I'm going to lay a towel across the top of it, put it off to the side, and I am going to let this rise. Now, more than likely, to get a really good rise, it's probably going to take at least 2 hours. And so if you can do this, for instance, I'm doing this about 12 noon. So if I give it a good 2.5, you could even go 3 hours in letting it rise the first time, then you will be able to have this bread ready for dinner, just like we're going to do today. So I'm covering it up. Now here we go. It is beautiful. So I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on it, because we're going to have to get it out of the bowl, and we do not want it to stick. So I'm pulling out the parchment paper. I'm going to use my favorite utensil, or favorite tool anyway, and that is my brazier. And that's what I'm going to bake the bread in. So I'm putting the paper into the brazier, and I'm just going to use my hands at this point and just kind of work that dough. You'll see it will just kind of plop out in just a minute. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of flour down so it won't stick. But see, it's still pretty moist. And you're thinking, ooh, well, that doesn't look like bread. But you know what? Who wants dry bread? We don't. We want moist, soft, beautiful bread. So I've got a clean scraper. I put a little flour on it, and I can kind of tap, and I'm going to fold it over until I get a really nice round baby's butt type of bowl here. So just keep folding, fold, and fold, and that's what you're doing. You're folding and tucking. That's why I tell my granddaughter, fold and tuck. Fold and tuck, and that's what we're doing. We're tucking it under. And then we'll put a little more flour down, just a little, just kind of to work it in, because we don't want anything to open up. And notice, I'm tucking it under and tucking it under until I get the round shape that I want. There we go. And it's nice and smooth on top. Now this is where I am going to put flour on top of it. And I'm just going to kind of play with it a little bit just to make sure it all stays together when I get ready to put it into the pot. So let's get it ready for the brazier. I'm going to try to use that brazier and just sit it right on the paper. So let's see if we can, darn, that wasn't supposed to happen. But guess what? This is a real kitchen and real cooking. So yes, it did. It flipped on me. How about that? So let's get it all shaped up again. All right, this time we're going to put the towel back over it. Same towel, right back over it. And I'm actually going to put the top on the pot so that it stays nice and warm. Now, this is not going to take a long time to rise, the second rise. So we're just going to get everything all cleaned up, all scraped up. And you'll notice I'm using my bench scraper, getting everything scraped up. Bench scrapers are wonderful, wonderful. So I am just scraping everything up. And it was only $1, guys. Don't get the expensive ones. Now let's get that soup ready. We are going to add to this pan, we're going to make just enough for 2 dinners. So we're going to add in just a tiny bit of grapeseed oil to the bottom, just a couple little swizzles. And then I'm going to start to put in some mild Italian sausage. And I'm getting it out of the wrapper. You'll see there it is. And I'm going to take a knife, slide it right down the wrapper that wraps the sausage, peel it off. And it takes just a second to get that all peeled off. There it is. And we're then going to break it up in the skillet. Now the skillet's still in the process of getting hot. And this one, because I had these in the freezer, this happened to be one of those that was still just not quite totally thawed. But that's okay, because he's going to be thawed right here in the pan. So that's 1 sausage, and I'm probably going to add anywhere from 3 to 4 sausages, but I want to look at what they look like in the skillet. You know, you have to kind of stand back and look at how much you're putting into the dish that you're going to make. So rather than at this point to say put in exactly 4, I'm going to look at the amount to make sure. Now if you were serving a family of 4, then what I'm preparing tonight would be perfect, because it would easily serve a family of 4. But just for the 2 of us, this is going to probably make 2 meals. So I am just slicing those, getting them out of their jackets, and breaking them into the skillet. So I did end up with 4 in total, and you'll see that as I continue on that they come apart very easily. I really didn't need to use the knife at all. It's just that one was still a little bit tough to get to break up, but everything else ended up quite just fine. So we're going to be happy with that. Now we're going to saute and actually get just a tiny bit of color on this sausage. And I'm going to get my hands washed up, and then we're going to start to add in seasonings and the veggies. So we're going to give it a moment and let it work. Now, you're going to see off to the side that if you look off, you'll see the vegetables that I'm getting ready to put into this skillet. And you're going to see the bread that's covered up with its towel, and it's over there rising. We're getting that ready. So all of these things are happening at the same time. And I'm doing them kind of early in the day, just so I'm not running around at the last minute. So I'm just making sure I have everything I need right there. But you can see the carrots, and underneath the carrots will be the onions. And I realized that I needed some celery, so I had to take a moment and go chop a quick bit of celery, get some garlic, and we're ready to go. All right, we're ready to continue on. So we waited and gave it just enough time to get happy in the skillet and nice and hot. All right, we're adding the vegetables, and we're just going to shake those in and get those vegetables in. There's the carrots, there's the onions, and we'll put the celery in as well, and you'll see that go in. There we go. Get all of that in the center, because it's nice and hot in always. That's the hottest spot in your skillet. You'll notice I have not added any more oil. So we're going to mix and make sure that we have the vegetables nice and incorporated with the meat. We're also going to start to add seasonings. So we'll put some salt in. I'm using a 1/2 teaspoon measure. So I'm going to add in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm also going to put in a 1/2 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. That's what I've got, an Italian mix. So I'm going to open that up, and actually I'm going to put a full teaspoon of that Italian mix in. It's not going to be too much. You'll find that it actually is not as strong. It has oregano and basil and thyme, all those good seasonings that you think of when you think of Italian food. So I'm going to shake in some pepperoncino. It's just strictly there for the background flavor, because remember, our Italian sausage was mild. It was not spicy at all. So let's give it I'm leaving this skillet on kind of a medium high heat at this point. And so I'll turn it down later, but for now we want to keep it at that level. So I'm going to add in a 28-ounce can of tomatoes. Now, I did not have whole tomatoes. That's what I usually like to do, have whole tomatoes and crush them myself. But this is what was on the shelf of the store, so this is what we're using, crushed tomatoes. But they are San Marzano, and so they should have very good flavors. So let's get the tomatoes in, and then I'm going to rinse the can out with some water, because we do need liquid at this point. So we're going to put that water in there, get that can good and rinsed. So almost an entire can of water will also go into this skillet. Now that's not going to be the only liquid, but this is just really just to make sure that we have all of the tomatoey goodness out of that can. Okay, so let's give that a little stir and see what it looks like. And you know, part of cooking is about how it smells. It's always about how it tastes, but it's also about what it looks like. So we're going to add in some garlic, and I'm going to use my measure again, and this is another half. Actually, this is 1 teaspoon, so I'm putting in a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic. There we go. That's just enough to give it a good garlicky background, but not enough to scare the vampires away. So we're going to get that mixed in as well. Now, the reason why I wasn't so worried about the garlic going in at this point was because of the fact that this is going to simmer while the bread is happy over there doing its thing. The soup is going to simmer on low. And if you wanted to do this in your crock pot, you could certainly do that, but I chose not to. So I am just going to give that a minute. I'm going to now start to add in, and that's 2 cups of chicken broth that I'm putting in, and I'm going to look at it again, give it a good stir, let it simmer a little while. And if I think I'm going to need more liquid, I will. But remember, we still have lentils to put in, and lentils are going to soak up the liquid. So I'm using my 1/2 cup measure again, and I'm going to put in at least a full cup, maybe a cup and a half of brown lentils. So I have gone through those lentils, and they are just fine, so I'm putting those in, and it may be that in the end I may decide to just add all the rest of these, because I actually had 2 cups measured. So I started small because you can always add more. And when it's time to warm up your soup, then I usually add a little more broth in. So let's take a peek at the bread while we're waiting for our soup to come up to a little harder bubble. And I'm just going to sit my spoon off to the side. There we go. Put the top on it and let's see what's going on under the top. Woohoo! Can you see the little bump at the top? Look at that. Yummy. Yummy, yummy. I'm trying to adjust you so you can see what I see. Now there's our bread, and remember this was the second rise. So I'm getting my serrated knife, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put an X across the top. There's one side and there's the other. Now when you cut in, don't cut too deep. Cut maybe 1/4 of an inch. That's plenty deep. But what that's going to do, first of all, is going to give your bread a very pretty top. So I'm putting the top on it because it's going to be ready to go in the oven. The oven is set and warm at 350. And you're going to notice that I'm going to have to move a few things along the way because that's where I keep my cast iron skillets. So I'm taking the 2 of them out. And it's okay for them to stay in there. They keep their seasoning well. And I'm even going to take a rack out because of the fact that this top is a little tall. So, and I want the bread in the center of the oven. So there we go. We're going to put it in, and I'm going to let it bake for the first part of the baking, about 40 minutes. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Our soup is simmering and it has a nice little bubble to it. I'm going to turn it down a little bit more so that it will be a more gentle bubble, but I do know that it's nice and hot. I've got the soup cooking on the stove. I've got the bread in the oven. So dinner is going to be ready and just waiting for everyone to say they're hungry. Now this is what it looked like when it first came out. And yes, it's beautiful, but it's not quite ready yet. It needs just a little more browning. And once I do that, then we're going to have a beautiful golden crispy crust that is going to delight your household. All right, I've put the pan down so that I can pull the bread. You see I'm taking it out by its sides and I'm sliding it off. I need to look at the bottom. I need to tap on it, and it's not ready, so we're going to put it back into the pan without the parchment and get it back into the oven for the second time because I want it just a little more brown than what it is. So you'll see that I'm going to open that oven, put it back in, leave it for at least 10 to 15 minutes. And when I take it out the next time, it is going to be beautiful. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, back in the oven. All right, we've got it out of the oven the second time, and you can see that it is absolutely beautiful. So we are going to just take the time, do a little tapping, and we're going to make sure that we can hear a nice hollow sound. I'm using my spatula because the bread's hot, the pan's hot, everything's hot, and I don't want to get burned. So there we have it on some parchment paper that we took it off of. We took it off that parchment paper. Notice I'm checking it on the bottom, and the top to make sure that both are nice and hollow sounding. So I placed the top back on the pot and kind of got it out of the way and just kind of picking things up. But at this point, I had considered cutting into it immediately. But you know what? We've got time. So I'm not going to do that. So there we go.